Videos aren't great if they don't have a great story to go along with them. And so today we're talking about how to use storytelling, what things you might want to think about when collecting stories, and how to make sure that you're doing it in an ethical fashion. We want people to hear the incredible stories that we have and hear them from the people that we're impacting, the people that are involved in our organization, the people that are helping share our mission. And we want to do it in a way that connects with our donors, but also is authentic and real. So today, to have this conversation with me is Chris Miano. Chris is the founder and CEO of Memory Fox and has made it his mission to elevate the stories of real human beings. He believes that through storytelling with grassroots, community-generated content, the world can become a more inclusive and equitable place for everyone. Chris was born and raised in Buffalo. He spent 8 years in the Army traveling around the world and learning about the power of storytelling as a tool to connect with people across many cultures, generations, and socioeconomic backgrounds. This is a very wonderful conversation and something that we haven't talked about on this podcast. How do we collect the information? How do we store it? How do we protect it? How do we have it in a place that makes it easy for us to continue to utilize it over and over again? How do we think about our stories and our videos in short and long form versions? So I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode, and I really hope that you enjoy it. But before we get into it, let's not forget about our April freebie. We are talking video this month, and so our freebie is all about how you can use video for donor retention and to steward those donors. How can you connect with them both in live and pre-recorded content to share your mission and continue to stay connected face-to-face in a one-to-many situation that feels personal and allows you to stay in touch and connected with your donors. So it's 10 ideas for you that you can use video in your donor stewardship. So head on over to thefirstclick.net/resources, grab that guide, and don't forget to check out the ones we have from earlier this year as well. I'd love to hear which of the resources is the most exciting for you. And as we keep developing new ones, would love your thoughts if you have things that would be super valuable and helpful for you. For now, let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern. Each month, we dive deep into a digital marketing or fundraising strategy that you can implement in your organization. Each week, you'll hear from guest experts, nonprofits, and myself on best practices, tips, and resources to help you raise more money online and reach your organizational goals. Hey friends, please join me in welcoming Chris Miano to the podcast. Chris, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're talking video all month, and videos aren't videos without great stories. So I know today is going to be an awesome conversation. But before we kind of jump into some of that, why video for you? Why is that something that you see making a big impact for really any type of business?
Yeah, it applies to nonprofits, but also, it goes for everybody as well, small, medium businesses. Stories are the way humans have transferred the most valuable and timeless messages and information across generations, cultures and socioeconomic statuses as well. It's how you connect with people on the most visceral and affecting level. Before people could even read, right, they were being told stories and they were telling stories and handing down stories, whether it's Gilgamesh or it could be Homer or Virgil. I'm a big nerd for stuff like that, the classics. But it's how our brains are wired when it comes to the important stuff in life. But on a practical level for fundraisers and even for small, medium businesses, there's a lot of data out there on why stories and storytelling is an ideal way to center your marketing and fundraising efforts. So I'm also like a little bit of a stats nerd too. So first and most importantly, you'll raise more funds and you'll make more money. Fundraising software company Classy, I don't know if everybody's heard of them, pretty big, but they did a study and they found that that fundraising campaigns that incorporated video stories about their mission and what they do receive 114% more funding than campaigns that didn't. Right, and that totally makes sense. I think from our level, video really gives you a window into the people and the mission like nothing else, like written word and things like that could never do. Second off, it's way more memorable. Stanford Business School did a study, and they found that stories are remembered up to 22 times more than just facts alone. And you'll notice big brands like Nike or things like that, like they're kind of telling you the story of how you're going to use it or what you're going to do with it. They're not like, this sneaker is made of this rubber. Like, no, you know what I mean? Nobody does that, right? It's about the stories of how it comes about. And then the third, which is maybe the most important, although maybe the least exciting, is what people want nowadays, right? Sprout Social did a study and they found that 62% of users, I mean, there's tons of studies on this stuff, but they said that they become more interested in a brand after seeing video stories about the brand in short form video. And that sort of brings up a broader point that I'm always super interested in. I feel like a lot of nonprofits have been given an impossible task these days of standing out in this increasingly crowded attention economy that's only getting more and more difficult, especially with AI becoming a part of it. But my mantra and the way we talk about it with our community is authentic grassroots video storytelling, with community generated video, beautiful stories that helps level the playing field. That's actually your secret power. And so that's why we at Memory Box, we spend our energy on helping people, take advantage of that special power in leveraging video.
Well, it's a much faster path to building trust, right? You said nonprofits have a hard time standing out. They also have a harder time earning trust from their potential donors or past donors or whomever. And so to be able to visually see the people that you're giving to and connect and in that way is just going to build trust a lot faster.
Yeah, and I think there's an even bigger thing that really emotionally resonates with me is that, like, I'm an Army veteran, so I despite how crazy things get, right, I love this country, right, and I love the people here, and we're just in this crazy place right now. Social media has made us nuts, and so, like, but if we can leverage the technology like social media for good, where we leverage it to really connect people, not like the fake connect that we do now, but like by sharing authentic stories where people can see themselves in your mission, where they're like, wow, that could happen to me, or that could happen to a loved one, or whatever, right? Or it could be, an issue that is a hot button issue, but they find that people that meet somebody who are transgender inevitably have a renewed idea of these abstract concepts and now become more favorable towards them. And that's just humans connecting, and that's nothing new, right? That's existed since the beginning of time, is that osmosis happens when people come together and when their story is elevated. And so that's sort of our mission from an emotional standpoint as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I feel like we get stuck. So when we think about stories in general, or if we're working on impact statements, like I feel we work in this kind of long form space. We write these big long blog posts about impact statements. We have our big annual reports. We have maybe like longer 3 to 5 minute videos that we're creating for our big gala event. But that in some of the things that we're talking about today and using it on social media and things like that, we're actually talking about quick snippets, short stories that are like 30 to 60 seconds. I think sometimes it's like we can't wrap our head around how do we convert what we're trying to convey into a video. So do you have any tips for kind of how we even start to develop stories in a new way for video, especially maybe short form?
Yeah, and I'll precede that with another point that you just made me think of. The best thing you can do for yourself as a nonprofit is build a story bank. And how you choose to do that, how you choose to keep it organized and manage consent. That's what we built Memory Fox for, is to help you build a story bank essentially, and then integrate it into all your, fundraising processes. But, you could totally do it on your own, but build that story bank so that you have that evergreen content, as they say. So you always have the right story for the right donor or the right event at the right time, rather than like, oh, we have a gala in a month, we need a video for it. Oh, we gotta get a hold of everybody, because that's not very ethical to ask a mission, but someone who benefits from your mission, like, we have a gala in 2 weeks and I need a story out of you. Like, now you've put them in a very precarious position. And so anyways, but I think, in a certain way, this is where people get locked up. Everyone knows they need to tell stories. I think we're born storytellers, right? Whether you're introvert or extrovert, it's sort of who we are as humans. But we have a pretty tried and true system, so I'll just kind of get into it. It's very simple. It's meant to be accessible to everybody. Storytelling should not be difficult. It should just be part of what you do as an organization. So I break it into steps. So step one, it's very simple. You start at the end. Always start at the end. And then maybe there's broader comments about all the work you do, start at the end and work your way back. But for this, it works perfect. So before you even go talk to anybody and start collecting stories or whatever, start at the end result. What are we trying to accomplish here? Is it for a social media campaign, a donor report, for a grant, for a gala, right? An impact piece of content that you're going to submit alongside a grant proposal will be vastly different from gala content. And so you want to start there. Well, what type of content do we want? Is it going to be like a single video? Is it a snippet? Is it going to be Instagram stories? Is it going to be whatever, right? So start at that end. Step two, walk your way backwards from that. So what type of content will satisfy the requirements for step one? Do we want testimonials? Do we want video of the mission in action? Do we want mission, like people, volunteers talking about why they volunteer? Or maybe it's even just thank yous from staff to a volunteer on their birthday. Like, what a beautiful, I mean, you just got a donor for life if you do something like that. They're not used to that stuff. And, right, because that tells the story of your organization as well, that what we value is also your story and the story you're trying to convey. So those are the first two steps. And then the third one, now that you know what you want to accomplish, what are the questions that we want to ask? Because those are the vehicle that you're going to drive in to elicit those great responses. Great questions that elevate people lead to great answers, and poor questions, they're just going to cause people to lock up or not give you the story you need, and then they're just wasting everybody's time. So really, really think about those questions. Are these questions, and we'll talk a little bit about how to craft those questions and how to do it ethically, but generally speaking, right, put a lot of time into those questions and how you craft them. So at a high level, really, it's just step one, define what you want to accomplish. Step two, what type of content will help you accomplish that? And then three, what are the call to actions? What are the questions that will help you satisfy those previous two requirements?
Yeah. Reverse engineering is my favorite thing. When you start with the end goal in mind, it just makes it so much easier to get there. And I think it also makes it easier to remove some of the fluff that's unnecessary that you maybe put in, because you're like, oh, but we also do this and we also do that. But like, well, that's not a part of this
Right.
actual end goal. So let's do that in another video, or let's create another piece of content around that. But when you start at the beginning, you can kind of meander in weird ways because you don't really know where you're headed to. So I think that's all really, really great advice. But yeah, let's jump into the way we create the questions too, because one of my most favorite things in my short stint in corporate was our marketing content creator would always say, he'd come to staff meetings and he'd say, I need more content. You guys aren't giving me enough content. And the whole team just looks at him like, well, what do you want? And he would never give specifics. He would never say, well, it'd be great to have this piece, or could you grab this quote from a client? Like, never that, right? So I love that you brought up the framing of the questions to help you get the quality that you need, and to also kind of drive the conversation again towards that end goal of where you're going. So yeah, why don't you just kind of jump right into that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to pin down exactly like a methodology. It's really about North Stars in terms of respecting and elevating the person that you're getting these stories from. And in terms of questions, I kind of think about it like how I ask my kids questions about how school went today. If I say, how was school today? They go, I don't remember.
Fine.
I don't know. But if you ask a more specific question, like, hey, like, how was science class, or how was this, or how was the test, or how was this? What was your favorite thing about today? Then they open up. And so it's the same thing when you're asking people for stories who are adults, right? Don't ask, like, what is the volunteer experience here like? Like, they're going to go, right? And now you're reliant on their brain to give you something that you need, or whatever it is. But if you tell them, why did you first start volunteering here? What was your first day of volunteering like? What was your favorite day of volunteering like? Now now they can put a picture in their head, and then they can describe that picture in the form of a story. And then now when you shift and you take that to, a donor, that helps them. Now they're visualizing it too. If it's just some broad volunteer experience, well, that may hit or miss. But everyone wants to hear everybody's favorite volunteering experience.
Yeah.
And with the questions, like, there's a bigger piece too that we could talk all day about, which is the ethics of the way that you ask stories and the language that you use. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about, how much is too much in regards to the information in a video. And I feel like these two things kind of go together, because the questions are what's going to guide the information that people give you. And so I kind of like to go into that because I feel like the questions go together. Because there's two parts.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, go on.
no, I was just going to say that, because yes, a perfect segue. And what this brings up for me also, I would love your thoughts on kind of when we're doing these kinds of things, because I love this idea. But like, let's say we have just in our procedures at the 6-month mark for these volunteers, we ask them to do this interview. We're collecting this information. I think we also tend to think we have to do some of this stuff in real time. So when we talk about how much is too much information, what questions are we asking, like, thinking about it from a global view of like you said earlier, we're collecting this bank of content, and we might take this one interview with this volunteer and use it into make a collage of our volunteers' favorite, experiences. And that's one video. Like, we don't have to do things and share them in real time necessarily.
No, but you do, and this gets into the ethics of it, is you do have to safeguard that content. It's not HIPAA, but especially if we're going to be a storytelling organization that cares about people's stories, the way we safeguard and manage that content is important as well. Just as important in a way. And think about, I bet there's a lot of listeners who've come into a new nonprofit organization and have gone through the shared drive and are like, there's videos on there, there's pictures from like 10 years ago. You may even have to put some of this together for like a 25th anniversary. And you're like, I don't know what any of these people are. I don't know if this is approved. I don't know if we're allowed to use it. I don't know who's in it. And so I can't use it. And because it would be unethical to use it, because you can't, you just can't do that. So I think, the way we safeguard people's stories and be our caretakers and curators of that story, I think is equally an important part of the content process. So you've got the first part, which is how do I get them to tell a story? How do I collect it ethically? Am I forcing a victim of domestic violence to come in, drive into the office, and then I'm going to put a bunch of cameras in front of them, and then I'm not going to tell them what the questions are beforehand. I'm not going to tell them where the piece of content is going to be used. I'm not going to tell them any way that if like 10 years from now their former husband gets out of jail and I want to get that piece of content pulled down because now it's a trigger that could create a very dangerous situation. I'm not giving them any of that stuff. Well, now you're just creating a very unethical situation. So as a storytelling organization, you have to think end to end in terms of we are ethically curating the story of our organization, from the way that we ask questions and to the way we deliver the content at the end. That's something that we're obsessed with. And we actually, Carly Euler, our marketing manager, she created this beautiful ethical storytelling report that has a lot of these tips in there from a lot of thought leaders throughout the nonprofit industry or segment, however you want to call it. And it's a really beautiful thing that she put together. You can find that on our website. All kinds of tips, from how to, if you're dealing with children or you're dealing with people who want to remain anonymous, all kinds of cool stuff.
Okay, so I cut you off when we were going to start talking about how much too much. So how do we kind of know that are we packing too much information into one video? Is there more calls to action? All of that goodness.
Yeah, there's two parts to this. The way I was thinking about it is the first part is on, and this is the one that I'm obsessed with, like we talked about, is the ethics surrounding sharing someone's story. We already talked about that a little bit. It's like not overstepping your bounds, But there's also the practical consideration is how much is too much in terms of what people will actually engage with on social media. I think there's two sides to it, right? There's the ethics, but there's also the engagement side. Now on the ethics side, like I said, we already talked about this a little bit, but overall, you really just want to let that storyteller be the driver of the car. You are the passenger. You're just providing them with the vehicle. And like I said, they're the driver for the eternity of that story. 10 years from now, if you're going to use it for something, you really want to have a mechanism, especially if it's a difficult story. If it's not, I mean, it could probably be a little bit looser, but if it's a very difficult story, you really should be reaching out to them to tell them you're going to be using this. And has anything changed in your life where this would no longer be appropriate? I bet I would challenge a lot of people to think about their processes, whether or not they have a process for that. So create those. Using Memory Fox, some of my favorite features are the ones that do that, that allow someone to withdraw consent. But that notwithstanding, on the practical side of things, asset-based language versus deficit-based language. I don't know if you ever had anybody on your podcast to talk about that, but that's another piece as well. When you're providing information, how much is too much information in that video? Consider that methodology. Is like you don't want to include any of that old school deficit-based language, or as we lovingly call poverty-born. People don't crave that anymore. And that may work short term, and it may work with some donors. And by all means, you want the right story for the right person at the right time. But generally speaking, people have moved past that because A, tastes have changed, but B, I think we've all learned that has created a lot of unintended consequences to constantly painting mission beneficiaries as these like poor, sad sacks that need help. I mean, I, as a veteran, right, that's the thing that drives me the most insane on the planet is turning us into just constant perpetual victims instead of talking about the tremendous strength of veterans and how they contribute to their communities. And they're not just these like ticking time bombs. That's something that I'm obviously very passionate about. And so eliminate that stuff. Pull that stuff out. Nobody wants it anymore. Nobody cares anymore. So the information should be strength-based, but also keep it short. And I think we all kind of are in agreement here. Is like everyone's attention spans have been crushed into dust, and they're used to figuring out whether something is valuable to watch in the first 5 seconds. Sometimes if that, depending on the platform. So focus. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but, and I'm maybe misquoting here, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Right? So focus on how you're going to make them feel and what are the essential requirements to that. Focus on make them feel something that is based on content that is ethical and uses asset-based language. And I think you can't go wrong. That'll limit what you put in there. And then, unlike me, who's very long-winded, for when you're trying to get content out there and you want people to watch it, you can't be like Chris Miano. You got to be like, have it nice and tight and to the point.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I love kind of the aspirational or the strength-based conversation points. I'm glad you brought that up too, because we want to feel like we're a part of the solution, right? That that things are moving forward and we get to help kind of continue to drive that momentum versus like everything's in the toilet and I think sometimes people think, well, if things are that bad, then what I give is not going to make an impact. Right. I think that might be that flip in how we're kind of emotionally attaching to these messages.
Yeah, and I think people can sniff it out nowadays too. I mean, where do you want to spend your time and your emotion, right? You're scrolling through Instagram or your whatever platform, right? Like negativity does sell. We all know that. I mean, that goes without saying. But everything is different when it comes to nonprofits. I think it's not like selling a product, right? When you're selling a product, you sell the problem that people have. Right, but nonprofit's like a little bit different, right? You're selling a future, right? You're selling a better world. You're not selling like, oh, it's like the black and white picture where someone's like fiddling with something and like juice gets all over them in the those like infomercials, right? Like that's not what we do. That's
Yeah.
not what we do.
Yep. No. I want to make sure before we wrap this up that we touch on kind of the hot topic that is on everyone's mind. You can't open up an app
Yes.
or a program or a platform that you use these days without an AI attachment to it. Same is true in video. So, if we're getting used to creating video, we've kind of got some things under our belts, we're feeling pretty good about it. And now we kind of see this AI tool pop up to help us do things a little bit faster. How can we still stay authentic in who we are um, in this effort to kind of produce content at a rapid
Yeah,
pace?
this is my favorite thing. This is why I spend all my time when I'm kicking back with my wife, drinking a little wine by a fire. I love talking about AI. I'm sure she probably doesn't like it as much, but I love it. I love talking about it. And I'm a bit old school, and so it's very much like a love-hate relationship. Sometimes I can't tell for like in chapter 1 of a dystopian novel, like a futuristic novel, where like that was when things started to get crazy. But I think about like the
Right.
content that so far has been created, but even like when it's really good, right? It's all a bit performative, right? It's not authentic, and so it's by its own nature performative. And I've yet to be moved by a piece of AI content. I don't know if you ever have, or if the listeners have, but I've yet to be moved by it because it's just window dressing. But I will say, obviously, AI can be very helpful in terms of you know the busy work that you do, planning things. AI can schedule things. It can do all those types of stuff. But if I'm being honest, when it comes to nonprofits, they should almost never be using fake AI generated content. Almost never. Here are the times where I think it is ethical to do it. It's really when the storyteller or has to remain anonymous. So let's say you do have a victim of domestic violence and you want to create, and they don't want to show their face. Maybe there's some audio, or maybe it's just written text or whatever, right? You may want to use like an image of someone holding a teddy bear or something like that. Or it could, I guess, hypothetically be a video or like a cartoon video in the future that kind of shows it and elicits a response. But like it should not be most of the time because I could imagine, right? Someone's trying to get me to donate, and they have like an AI generated video of someone. Like it just doesn't really work. But for specific purposes,
Mm-hmm.
it can really work. But you cannot fake it with donations. Like products, people can be tricked, but donate, like selling a used car, right? Like you can be tricked into buying a used car, but like to become a persistent donor, you're not trying to get a one-time donation here. You're trying to get a relationship for life. And then you want them when they die, they write it in their will that they then donate more, ideally, right? And so if I one time got wind that they're creating AI videos of events that they have or like constituents that they support, I would be livid, right? They want real connection and real stories, the same stuff for thousands of years. And like if you're submitting to a foundation, the impact that a grant had, and you submit AI video, you will never get another dime from them if they find out. You're irrevocably sort of harming those relationships. But I think I'll maybe close on this is like I think moving forward for nonprofits, authenticity is going to be a competitive advantage for them because everybody is going nuts about AI images, AI video, AI text, all this AI stuff. And if you remain true to the people part of your mission and the authenticity as a North Star for the way you tell people about your story and the way you handle your organization, I believe that that's going to set you apart and give you a competitive advantage in standing out on social media and with donors who everybody's competing for their dollars on the same playing field of Instagram. So lean into it. Lean into your authenticity. Don't be afraid of ums and ahs and oh, is this person camera ready?
Yeah,
Oh, is this picture it's a little bit off center? Like, who cares? It's beautiful grassroots content. It is what people crave, and it's never going away. So it's like, let's lean into it
mm-hmm.
and define ourselves by our competitive advantage, not trying to keep up with the for-profits on social media and things like that.
No, and I love that you said use it to kind of streamline some of your admin type stuff or your work or the processes or whatever. One other way that I love AI is like, let's say you do put a little bit more effort into some longer form videos, maybe you have a YouTube channel or whatnot. Like you can use AI tools to help you pull, like, hey, like which snippets should we pull out of this for short video to repurpose, right? So you're using AI to help you repurpose your existing content versus create new, right? But it's still saving you time and effort because now you don't have to comb through the transcripts and the video, right? So there's, I think, a lot of ways, just and like the ones that you mentioned, where it can be thoughtfully used with your own already created content to help you get and repurpose more of it out there.
One of the features that I'm like obsessed with building, although we are just a small company right now, we don't have all the developers of Microsoft, but like to build an AI tool that will, because people use memory fox, right? They're collecting tens, hundreds, thousands of pieces of content from their community. And wouldn't it be cool if we could build an AI tool that they could be like, I want to build a video out of these 9 videos. And it could sort of like pick the best snippets from each video and then mash them together. And heck, in the future, even throw in music and then do the transcript. Somebody's probably already working on this, and maybe we'll just integrate with them. But like, there's so much cool stuff that you can do. But like, it's people first. It's people first. We are in the business of people. It's never going away. For-profit companies are trying forever to get out of the business of people. Like they want to be in the business of numbers, of funnels, of what metrics. Like that's where they live. But we are never going to get away from the business of people. That's what nonprofits do. And it's just so let's lean forward, let's lean into it and double down on it.
I love that. Well, that seems to me to be kind of a nice place to kind of wrap it up, because I love that. Being people first, human first, and really showing up truly on video as yourself. I think such great tips and information that you shared in here. We will definitely link up the tell me the name of your guide again. We'll link that up in our show notes.
Yes. So thank you. It's a wonderful guide.
Yes.
She did such a great work on it.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Chris, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about Memory Fox, how do they do that?
Sure, yes. Well, of course, you can always go to our website, memoryfox.io, which is kind of interesting. But if the guy ever wants to sell me the .com, maybe one day we'll get to that. But no, but feel free to reach out to me anytime on LinkedIn or social media, or email me, chris@memoryfox.io. Like I said, I love to nerd out about storytelling and AI and things like that. So if you're a nonprofit that just wants to talk shop about storytelling, just needs advice, or just wants to work through some issues, feel free to reach out anytime. I love this stuff, and it's the most important work in the world as far as I'm concerned.
That's so good. All of the resources, all of the links, all of the goodness will be at thefirstclick.net/252. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again to Chris for joining me today. It was such a great conversation. I so appreciate his insights and thoughts on making sure that we're doing things right, that we're stepping up as good humans, that we're being authentic, and that we are really setting ourselves up for success in the long haul. Like he said, we're not in this just to get the donor to give one time, right? We're looking for that longevity so that we can continue to increase and grow our impact. The show notes are going to be found at thefirstclick.net/252. Don't forget, you can always watch these videos on YouTube as well. I hope that you'll subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss out on any of the amazing episodes that we have coming up. This month is full of video content, and it's going to be awesome. For now, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.